Hey guys, Joy from theSPACE. I am fortunate enough to be here with Donna Patane from MacDonnells Law. Hey Donna. We've had Donna in for previous, or maybe this is the first masterclass that you've seen Donna in, but she's done quite a few and stoked to have her back. So this is part of an ongoing masterclass series that we're creating to help you more effectively commercialize your ideas by providing you really good quality chunks of information to help level up your learning. So today we're going to talk around commercialization documents. So without any further ado, I want to throw to Donna to get started. Thanks, Donna.
Thanks, Fred. So yes, commercialization, I'm going to press the wrong thing again,
No,
is all about paperwork. Yay, paperwork. Lawyers love paperwork. You need to love paperwork too, and here's why. So this is a picture I found years ago now, but I continue to bring it up because I think it's a really good depiction of what can happen in the startup space, particularly where we're dealing with startups that are, in groundbreaking sort of areas and developing widgets or apps or something that really doesn't exist anymore. So so you can't just say, it looks like a swing hanging off a tree because there's nothing to refer back to. So when you're trying to describe what it is you're working on and what you need other people to do, you can end up with this situation of various different options. My favorite is how the business consultant described it. Yeah.
Which one's the business consultant? Oh yes, so nice.
So we can end up with not quite what we want. And it seems like it should be logical. It's a tire swing, not a wooden swing. But because
interpretation.
The paperwork's not there. We're not all on the same page. Not everyone is seeing what everyone else is seeing in their mind's eye. So paperwork is very, very good for your commercialization. There is a stack that can be involved. And certainly the belts and braces approach would be get all the paperwork. And that's probably what I'm obliged to recommend, because the more paperwork you have, the less likely you're going to have issues with misunderstandings and people not appreciating what their role was or what they're getting paid for which part, and if things go pear-shaped, how we're dealing with things and separating them. So these are probably the top lots of bits of paperwork that I'd suggest. The first one, and really the most important one, is your Founders Agreement. The Founders Agreement is kind of my sort of umbrella term for a few different documents. It's generally your partnership agreement or your shareholders agreement, depending on if you're a partnership or a company or some other type of structure.
Cool.
So I put together a checklist.
Yay.
Which has exciting stuff in it to draw your attention or your mind to the types of things that need to go into your Founders Agreement.
I think this is really cool because I've seen a whole bunch of shareholders or Founders Agreements, and you look at them and they're 30? They're 30-ish pages long, and it can be quite overwhelming, particularly like I am not so much a paper person. I'm just about getting it done, done what I need to get done. But I really have come to appreciate the value of having this in place, because the humanness of it all, it just protects you when things go wrong, and they inevitably will. Things change, and it is an agreement about what you're going to do. Critically important, as critical as making sales is something that I've said before. So Donna's put together this agreement to help just demystify what it actually is. So, yeah. Thanks, Donna.
So it's a
so we're going to share this?
Brief checklist? Yeah, totally.
We'll share this as part of this video.
So it's a brief checklist of the types of things that need to go into your Founders Agreement. And it is an important agreement, as you say. And it's also a binding legal document. So it's kind of like your prenup of your startup. And it's really works best if it's done at the outset, before the wedding. And it's something that is best done by a lawyer because it's a legal document, and it should be binding, and it needs to be in a certain format and include certain things to be legally binding, but also to be useful to you so that you can rely on it when or if you need to. So the types of stuff that go into it are What is the structure we're using? What's the roles and responsibilities of those people involved, particularly if, you know, someone's a silent investor, they're just putting in the money and they don't want to be in the day-to-day, or if there's some inconsistency between the different parties or directors or shareholders based on their skill set. It's a document where you can put in acknowledgements to say, you know, Leonard had been working on this for 3 years and he's only just got, you know, David to come on as the marketing guy. So there's got to be an imbalance of effort to date, and that should be reflected in your shareholding and in your founders agreement. So you can have those sort of flexibility items built in.
Cool.
Generally, there's always a section on finance talking about initial contributions, what happens if we need more capital, how should it be paid into the company or partnership, how should we be borrowing, terms you know, that set out how the company can spend and what kind of spending each director or shareholder can do without the consent of the others.
So it's all logical stuff that you need to agree on, and this is the time to sit down and go, all right, let's agree on how we're going to do this.
Yeah, and if you just go through the checklist and put yourself a few little notes, that will also help the lawyer that you go to, because it means we've already thought about all these variabilities and we know where we're headed, so we can build it.
I'd go to MacDonnells.
I think so. Yeah. So the operational stuff needs to be in here in terms of here's what the business is going to be doing. We're going to be building our widget, and our intention is to sell them online, offline, in store, you know, through some sort of distribution arrangement. We're franchising it. Think through, you know, what your goal is, your business plan kind of.
And how often would you say the shareholders agreement changes? Is it a static document, or is it?
Not often, hey. Sometimes if a different investor comes in and they want different rules, we might tweak things. But the general intention is, once you know where things are heading, get it done once, get it done properly. And then just bring it out if...
You can just tweak it. If say, for example, how your manufacturing changes, so then you could update that element of it, not the whole thing, just update it.
Definitely. And then just bring it out if someone wants to leave or someone goes pear-shaped. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but
the reality
more often than not, that's why we end up looking at it.
And the reality is it's business, it's life, people move on, things change, and that's why it's important to do this. That's why it's critical to do this.
And at the outset, while everyone's getting along and friendly and, you know, pretty happy to agree on your role and my role, and, well, what happens if someone does want to leave? And how do we do evaluation? So that's probably one of the biggest sections. In terms of dealings with shares, transfers, and the buy-in, buy-out sort of procedure. And it generally will include preemptive rights, which are the rights where if you want to leave, you have to first offer your shares to me to buy them at a rate set out using a valuation we've previously agreed on. If I can't afford it or I don't want them, then you can sell them to a third party. So setting out that procedure means that there's a black and white set of rules to play by if there's movement in the different shareholders, comings and goings, and it's a hell of a lot easier to deal with, particularly if it's not an amicable departure. So if it's not an amicable departure and we end up fighting, it's going to be very expensive because everyone's going to need their own lawyers. We're not going to have sort of clear rules to play by. We're going to have an argy-bargy about what valuation we want to use. It's just a disaster. So getting all of that squared away at the outset makes that departure process amicable or not.
Makes it logical.
And logic sort of doesn't apply when people are enraged.
And that's what you need at that point when people are emotional, is like, this is the logic we agreed on, let's just do that. And it's a legally binding document, so this is the process you're required to follow. It can also deal with the ending of either one shareholder's relationship with a company or partnership, or if you decide to shut it down. It's not working, we can't get the sales, no one wants widgets, we're going to shut it down. So there'll be a process for distribution of income and assets and things like that. And if you're having a departure of just one party, I would always recommend a restraint of trade. So if you have 3 or 4 people come together, you're developing this cool widget that hasn't been developed before, so there's IP in it. There's inner workings, there's, all of that sort of knowledge that's within the heads of the people involved. If one leaves, you want to make sure that they're contractually bound to not just pop up and duplicate it. Or you've wasted a lot of time. Otherwise, they might take all the good, of what it is that you've been working on, and leave all the challenges, all the, you know, it's challenging in business that you're in, and then go and pop up somewhere else, all new and fresh with everything that they've created.
Yeah, and compete, and you're still recovering financially from your R&D and whatnot.
Exactly.
And difficult, very difficult. So you can have a contractually binding term that prevents that for a period of time.
Cool.
So definitely a sort of key sort of thing to go into your Founders Agreement. Buy-sell arrangements, I've kind of dealt with those in terms of comings and goings. And then the other things to consider are confidentiality, you know, making sure everyone's bound to keep your widget idea and your marketing and your, you know, customer list, all of that sort of stuff confidential, because it belongs to the company, it's valuable. Making sure there's a procedure for dispute resolution in terms of if you're following the rules for decision making, and you've got 4 is usually annoying because you can have it, you know, two-way tie. What happens in those sort of instances? Well, we want to go this way and you guys want to go that way, and we need a procedure for that. And then terms that are particular to the type of business. So the things like we're intending to protect the IP and then we're going to sell it using what method? Traditional, online, we're going to franchise it. Dealing with those sort of things and thinking through how that process is going to work and the parties' roles within those processes. Is someone going to head up Brisbane and someone will head up Adelaide? Thinking all that through. So
thinking as logically from a lot of the guys that I know are going to be watching this, is that these are elements that will change, like that buy and sell. Like, to a large extent, they may be still figuring this out. It's not a reason not to do this, but at this stage, just put in your best assumptions, or for example, in the buy and sell, where that's at for now, and that can be updated later. Yeah.
And I mean, we acknowledge that things move as well.
Yep.
So a lot of the time, we'll draft those kinds of terms sort of broad, so that, I mean, the valuation certainly needs to move, particularly in startup land, because when you're doing it, your valuation is probably minus.
Yep.
But you need to include the flexibility and sort of the lack of detail to make sure that it will still work if it's been a couple of years and things have changed.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to see people annually to be changing their shareholders agreement. I don't think it's a useful use of your money. So making sure that it's got enough detail to cover you off, and it's got enough flexibility to deal with what your initial plans are.
So fundamentally, the general stuff won't change, finance stuff won't change. To a large extent, the operational stuff will remain relatively the same. Transfers, what is the default? It's just some of the small elements may require updating, but not the critical. They're not the super critical stuff. It's more important to get the super critical stuff of what you agreed on down on paper.
Yeah. And signed.
Yeah.
Make sure that you get signed.
And witnessed.
Yeah. And certainly that's the most important probably part of our role, to make sure it's done, it's drafted, and it gets signed.
So just looking at this, we'll just unpack the Founders Agreement a little bit. Are we going to go into those other ones?
No, I'd like to flag some of the other ones, just because, I mean, everyone should have a Founders Agreement. The other ones kind of maybe you don't. Yeah. So the other sort of more popular one is the confidentiality deed, or NDA. This is really important at the outset because you don't want someone taking a good idea and popping up somewhere else.
And also for if you are working on something that's proprietary, it's new to the world, to ensure that it's not presented publicly to protect any chance of patenting.
Correct. Yeah. So if you're if you're dealing with something that potentially could be patented or registered as a design, and you make it public before you have filed your application, you won't have a right to file.
Yeah. So
dead in the water, absolutely fatal. So you need to have a confidentiality deed, or just talk to yourself and no one else.
Yeah.
So fatal to patents or design. Same rule doesn't apply to trademarks.
Just talking to yourself is fatal as well.
Probably. You'll end up
in circles.
Yeah.
Creating something nobody wants.
Yeah. So that's your confidentiality NDA. Look, they're not expensive to put together. I reckon allow $500 or $600, and it's done. Yeah. And generally, when I do them for a startup, I know that they're going to need to talk to a few different people with different skills. So I'll do it on the basis of a sort of pro forma with a schedule. So when they deal with the next person, they write in who they are and get them to sign.
Yeah.
So you don't have to come back and see me each time you're dealing with someone new.
Yeah, awesome.
So yeah.
Awesome.
The next one's a purchase or license of IP. This one usually comes up for people who have just rolled over their entity. So if you've gone from a sole trader to a company, or if there's a group of you and one has decided that they're going to take the business on and the others have had enough and they're out. So you need to work out where the IP is owned. Particularly copyright will end up sitting in a few different places. And you want to make sure that, you know, the person who's taking it on or the company holds all of those pieces. And you need formal assignments, written assignments, to get most of that across. So tidying that up, which usually we do as part of a rollover to a new structure, if that's the case.
Sure.
Collaboration or R&D agreements for if you're working with other people who are just coming in to sort of do their part and then go back out again. You don't want to, they're not going to be buying it or anything like that. You're sort of just taking them on as a collaborator temporarily.
It's just an agreement of the rules of the game. This is what we think is going to happen at the outset. Who's doing what?
Yes. Expectations. Here's what I expect you to do. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how much I'm going to pay you, or how the payment's calculated. All that sort of stuff.
Cool.
The other ones are shorter, sort of one-sided documents. Your privacy policy, if you're, you know, before you go public. Your terms of service, how you're providing your widget or your service. That usually includes your limitations of liability. Don't burn your house down. If you do, you can't sue me. That sort of stuff. Online terms, if you're selling online or if you're dealing with an app or something like that. And then in a more traditional sort of, you know, sales processes, you know, manufacturing, licensing, distribution type agreements for all the parties involved in that process. And if it's a widget, a product warranty, something that, you know, covers off your warranties, compliant with the Australian consumer law, and, you know, covers you if something happens with your widgets. So they're probably the main sort of sets of paperwork.
The other one that I've seen is the employment agreement. Yeah, like if you're at that stage where you're employing people, employment agreements are important too, right? Yeah.
And either you're dealing with someone who's subject to an award, so you need to make sure you're complying with whatever the award is, or it's a, you know, a manager or some sort of bespoke arrangement where, again, it's the rules of the game. Here's what here's your duties. The amount of times I see some sort of employment agreement doesn't say, here's your duties, is a bit ridiculous, but here's what you need to do, here's what you're paid to do that. And, you know, processes for notice if there's issues. You're not doing what you're required to do, so here's a notice you know, to comply, or you'll be terminated.
And similar to around IP, you know, like keeping your IP safe within your organisation, so that they're not, because they're not bound by a shareholders agreement to your employee. So you want to bind them to not be able to just take your IP and go and use it.
Duplicate it.
Yeah, duplicate it. Yeah.
And it's a hell of a lot easier to sue on a document. So, I mean, if it comes to it, or even if it comes to a demand, being able to say, clause such and such of your founders agreement or employment agreement says you need to keep this confidential and not use it, and here's what your restraint says. So your demand says, here's the black and white. Here's the conduct that's inconsistent with that. Bad stuff will happen if you don't stop what you're doing. Without your document, your demand becomes a lot more difficult, and therefore you're less likely to get compliance, and you're more likely to have to sue and take more formal steps. More expensive, more time consuming, more stressful for everyone involved.
And you're taking your eye off the ball, growing your company, off your customers, and it sounds to me like a spiral into the depths, and you don't want to go down that path. So it's just good practice to make sure everybody's on the same page, whether a shareholders agreement, employment agreement, or using all these other bits and pieces of paperwork that you may or may not need as you go through your journey. So again, I'll ensure that Donna's contact details are available at this for any questions. And do you have any other rounding out comments?
Probably just don't avoid it. It's not a fun exercise. People don't like paperwork, but really, you know, if it is the hard thing to do it first thing in the morning, or allocate it to a lawyer or someone else to do so that it happens. Yeah,
this is critical. Like I've said it before, it's as critical as making a sale, because fundamentally we're all human. We have this humanness about us and other demands on us, whether it's family, whether it's health, or whatever it might be. It pulls us in different directions. And I've seen the yuckiness of it over the last 6 years. And without these, if you don't do this, you know, I think you're putting your idea at tremendous risk. So get it done, just get it done. Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right, thanks, Donna.
Thanks for having me.
Cool, sweet. See you guys.